How do you rebuild your life at 51 when your wife and your business partner take everything and leave you a note that thanks you for trusting them? What do you do when you go from running a company to parking cars, and a stranger suddenly says a billionaire has been looking for you since 1994? Why would a man with endless resources care about me now? My name is Marcus Reed. I am 51 years old. Until a few weeks ago, I thought I had a stable life. I ran a company I helped build from nothing. I had a wife I believed in. I had a business partner I treated like family. I was not loud. I was not flashy. I was the type of man who fixed problems early and tried to keep peace. I thought that made me safe. That morning started like a normal morning. I woke up early because I always did. I made coffee. I checked my phone for the daily numbers, the same way I had done for years. We had several accounts, and I liked to see the totals before my first meeting. It was a habit, like checking the weather. I expected to feel tired but proud. Instead, I felt the air leave my chest. The company account was almost empty. Not just low, not just a dip from a big payment. It looked like someone had opened a drain and let everything out. Cash was gone. Investments were gone. The balances that used to sit there like solid ground were now thin, like a lie. I blinked and refreshed the screen. I checked the date. I checked the login. I checked again. Nothing changed. I stood at the kitchen counter and tried to keep my hands still. I told myself to slow down. Panic makes mistakes. I looked around the kitchen like the room could explain it. The sink was clean. The lights were off. My wife's coat was not on the chair where she usually left it. Her travel mug was not by the coffee machine. That small detail landed harder than the numbers. I called her. It went to voicemail. I called again. Same result. I walked to the living room. Her suitcase that lived in the closet was gone. The drawer where she kept her passport was open. A small space on the shelf was empty, like someone had removed a framed photo. I kept moving, slow, like I was trying not to wake the house. On the kitchen table, there was a note, one sheet of paper, placed neatly, like it was part of the morning routine. Her handwriting was careful and clean. She wrote that she was leaving. She wrote that I had been too trusting. She wrote that she was choosing a different life. The words were simple, but they cut deeper than any long explanation. There was no apology. There was no fear. It read like a person closing a door and feeling proud about it. I sat down and read it twice. Then I read it a third time. Not because I needed to, but because my mind was trying to make it less real. I thought about the years. I thought about holidays with her parents, the way I paid for flights without asking questions. I thought about late nights at the office when she said she missed me, and I believed her. I thought about the company dinners where she smiled at investors, and I felt grateful. I thought about how easy it was to trust the people closest to you. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I cleaned the coffee cup like my body wanted a normal task. Then I picked up my keys and went to the office. It was early enough that traffic was light. The sun was low. I remember noticing the red light at one intersection and how calm it looked. That calm made me feel strange, like the world had not heard the news yet. Our building was familiar. I had walked through those doors thousands of times. The lobby still smelled like polished floors and new paint. The same company logo was on the wall. Everything looked normal. That is the cruel part. When a life breaks, it often breaks inside a normal-looking room. I went to the security gate and tapped my badge. The light stayed red. I tapped again. Same result. I tried one more time, slower, like the machine needed respect. It still stayed red. The security guard looked at me and then looked away, like he was trying not to be involved. I asked him to check it. He told me the system said my access was inactive. He said it in a careful voice, like he was reading from a script. I walked to the reception desk. The receptionist had known me for years. She usually greeted me with a smile and a quick update. That morning, she did not meet my eyes. She asked for my name like we were strangers. I told her, calm. She typed something and her shoulders tightened. She said she could not let me through without approval. She offered to call someone, but her hand hovered above the phone as if she already knew the answer. I asked if my partner was in. She said he was in a meeting. I asked if she could tell him I was here. She nodded, but her face looked strained. I stood there, a few feet from the desk, like a guest waiting for permission in my own place. People walked past. Some were junior staff I had hired myself. They acted busy. They looked at the floor. They did not stop. After several minutes, my partner came down the hallway. Owen Klein. Same suit, same relaxed pace, like nothing had happened. He did not look surprised. That told me more than any words could. He walked up and spoke like he was handling a small scheduling problem. He told me we should talk somewhere private. He said there had been some changes, and it was complicated. He said he was trying to protect the company. I asked him why my access was gone. He said it was temporary. I asked him why the accounts were drained. He said he did not know what I meant. He said the company had to move funds for stability. He said that decisions had been made and I was being emotional. He said I should go home, rest, and we could talk later. He said it with a calm face, like I was the problem for asking. I noticed something small then. His watch was new. I did not care about watches, but I noticed it because it was expensive and fresh. I noticed he was wearing a new ring as well, not a wedding ring, just a shiny piece meant to be seen. It did not prove anything. It just fit the moment. He looked like a man who thought the world was already agreeing with him. I asked him to let me upstairs to my office. He said my office was being used for storage now, and there was no point. I asked him who approved these changes. He said the board was informed. He said everyone knew I had been stepping back. He said he was doing the heavy lifting. He said it like a story he had practiced. I looked at the receptionist again. She kept her eyes down. She held her hands together tightly. I could tell she was uncomfortable, but she did not move. I did not blame her. She had a job. She had a rent payment. People like Owen know how to use that. They know which rooms they can control. I left the building because standing there was not helping. My head felt clear, almost cold. I walked to my car and sat for a minute. I took one slow breath and decided my next step would be a bank. If the money moved, it moved through a system. Systems have records. Records do not care about charm. The bank branch was one we used for years. I had been there for meetings. The staff had offered coffee before. That day, the teller looked at my ID and then looked nervous. I asked to speak with someone in management. I waited in a small meeting room with glass walls. People walked by and glanced in, the way people look at an animal in a quiet cage. A manager came in with a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. She said she understood I had concerns. She asked what I needed. I told her the company balances were nearly empty. I told her I needed details and an immediate freeze. She listened and nodded. Then she said something that made the room feel smaller. She said the authorized profile on the account had changed. She said she could not discuss certain details without the current authorized signer present. I told her I was the authorized signer. I told her I founded the company. I told her my name was on the account for years. She said she did not doubt my history, but the current profile was what the bank had to follow. She said this was a compliance matter. She said her hands were tied. She offered to take a message and schedule a call. I asked when the change happened. She said she could not say. I asked who requested it. She said she could not say. I asked if it involved my partner. She said she could not speculate. Her voice stayed calm, but her posture stayed guarded, like she was protecting herself from a storm. I left the bank with nothing in my hands, no paper, no answers, just a heavy awareness that someone had prepared for this while I was living my normal life. Outside, the air felt sharp. Cars passed. People carried shopping bags. A dog pulled at a leash. Life was still normal for everyone else. I drove to a nearby parking garage and pulled into a quiet corner. I turned the engine off. The silence was loud. I stared at the steering wheel until the shape of it stopped moving in my vision. I thought about calling friends. I thought about calling my wife's parents. I thought about yelling at Owen in the lobby. None of it would restore a single dollar. None of it would put my life back in place. So I did the only thing that made sense. I slowed down again. I replayed the morning, step by step, like I was watching it from above. The empty account, the missing suitcase, the note placed neatly like a final signature, the red light on my badge. Owen's calm face, the bank manager's careful words. People like Owen and Elena did not win because they were smarter in every way. They won because they planned while I assumed loyalty. They moved while I stayed polite. They counted on me staying calm as a weakness. I realized then that calm could be something else. It could be a tool. In that garage, I sat with my hands on my knees and made myself one promise. I would not beg. I would not chase them with emotions. I would not do anything careless. I would learn what happened in a way that could stand up in a room full of serious people. I would let facts do what anger could not. And I would start by surviving the day in front of me. For the first 2 days, I kept telling myself there had to be a mistake. I kept thinking the bank would call back and say it was a system error. I kept thinking Elena would walk back in and say she was upset and needed space. I kept thinking Owen would stop playing games and meet me like a partner. None of that happened. So I started looking back, because the present made no sense without the past. When you get blindsided, you want to believe it came out of nowhere. But if you slow down, you usually find a trail. Not a loud trail. A quiet one made of small choices and small silences. I met Owen 12 years ago. We were both in our late 30s. I was the technical side. I built the product. I fixed the problems people did not want to touch. Owen was the front side. He talked to investors and clients. He was smooth in rooms where I felt stiff. He shook hands, remembered names, and made people feel important. At first, it worked because we respected each other's roles. I did not try to be him. He did not try to be me. We had clear lanes. I handled the work and the hiring of engineers. He handled contracts, sales, and finance. When we won our first big client, we celebrated like kids. I remember thinking I had found the rare thing, a partner who wanted the same goal. Elena came into my life around that time. I was 39. She was 32. We met at a friend's small dinner. She laughed easily. She listened when people spoke. She asked simple questions and looked like she actually cared about the answers. I was used to people talking over me, so her attention felt like warmth. I was not rich then. We had a growing company, but most of the money went back into it. Elena did not seem to mind. She told me she liked steady men. She said she was tired of drama. She said she wanted a calm home. Those words mattered to me. I believed them. When we married, I thought we had built something solid. I worked long hours, but I never hid what I was doing. I would come home tired and still ask about her day. I wanted her to feel seen. I paid for her course programs. I paid off her old credit cards. I told myself it was teamwork. I did not keep score. Elena started helping the company in small ways. She said she liked being part of what I built. She began joining dinners with clients. She learned how to talk about our brand in a way that sounded clean and confident. People liked her. Some clients seemed more relaxed when she was there. Owen also liked her. He told me she was good for business. I felt proud. I thought I had built a small family around the company. The first signs were easy to ignore. Owen began making small changes without asking. He would move meetings and say it was for efficiency. He would send an email to the team that spoke like he was the main decision maker. If I brought it up, he would smile and tell me I was too sensitive. He would say he was just trying to keep things moving. Elena also started shifting. She began caring more about how things looked than how they were. She wanted better photos for the company website. She wanted a new office layout because she said it felt cheap. She started talking about our image, the way some people talk about oxygen. If I disagreed, she would sigh like I was holding her back. At first, I told myself it was normal growth. When a company grows, roles change. When money increases, people start dreaming bigger. I was still focused on building something that worked. They were focused on building something that looked like it worked. I did not realize those can become two different worlds. One afternoon, I walked into a conference room and saw Elena and Owen already seated close together, looking at a laptop. They both looked up too quickly. Owen said they were planning a client pitch. Elena said she was just helping with wording. Their faces were calm, but the timing felt odd. I remember it because my stomach tightened for a second, then I pushed it away. I did not want to be the suspicious husband. I wanted to be the stable man she said she wanted. Over the next months, they started having more planning time that did not include me. Elena would tell me she had a late dinner with Owen and a potential investor. Owen would tell me Elena had a great sense for networking. They spoke about it like I should be grateful. I tried to be. Then there was the money side. Owen began insisting we needed cleaner systems. He said we needed fewer people touching accounts. He said it would reduce errors and impress investors. He offered to consolidate logins and centralize approvals. I was not excited about it, but I also did not want to slow things down. I told him to do it carefully. He told me he would. One day, I tried to access a shared finance dashboard we used to review weekly. My password did not work. I assumed it was a reset. I asked Owen. He said they upgraded the tool and would add me back. Days passed, then weeks. When I asked again, he said he would handle the numbers and just brief me. He said I did not need to be in the weeds anymore. That line stayed with me. Not because it was angry, but because it was a quiet removal, like someone taking your chair and acting like it was always theirs. At home, Elena began making little comments that landed like needles. She would say I was too focused on details. She would say I did not understand how people think. She would say I made rooms feel heavy. She would say Owen had a presence that I did not have. She would say it like she was giving advice, not criticism. But it always ended with me feeling smaller. There were also social moments. At company events, Owen would tell stories where he was the hero and I was the background. People laughed. They clapped him on the back. Elena laughed the loudest. If I corrected a detail, Owen would raise his hands like I was ruining the fun. He would tell me to relax. People would smile at me like I was the serious one who needed to lighten up. I did not want to fight in public. I did not want to be the man who needs to win every room. So I stayed quiet. I told myself results mattered more than applause. I told myself adults do not compete for attention. I told myself I was being mature. But the cost of being mature is that louder people sometimes start writing your story for you. It got worse after we hit a major milestone. We had a profitable quarter. We were finally building a real reserve. I thought we would pay down debt and strengthen the product. Owen and Elena started talking about expansion in big, vague terms. They talked about new entities, new branding, fresh energy. They spoke as if the past was a burden. One night, Elena told me she wanted to restructure our life. She said my routine was boring. She said I dressed like I did not care. She said I was too comfortable being invisible. She said she wanted to be seen. She said she did not want to wait for me to catch up. I remember looking at her and feeling confused. I had built a life for us. I had paid for everything that gave her freedom. I had believed being steady was a gift. But in her eyes, steady had become the same as dull. Around that time, I began noticing how Owen spoke to staff about me. Not harshly. That would have been obvious. He spoke about me like I was fading. He would tell people I was focused on special projects. He would say I was stepping back from leadership. He would say he was protecting me from stress. Some staff started treating me like a consultant instead of a founder. One day, I walked into the open office and heard someone ask if I was still full-time. They asked it like it was normal. That was the moment I realized my role was being erased while I was still standing in the building. I tried to have a direct talk with Owen. I asked him why he was telling people I was stepping back. He said it was just wording. He said he was trying to make our leadership story look stable. He said investors like clear lines. He said I should not take it personally. Then I tried to talk to Elena. I told her I felt pushed aside. She looked at me like I was being dramatic. She said I was imagining problems because I was tired. She said Owen respected me. She said I should be grateful she was helping keep the company attractive. She said I was lucky to have her. That word, lucky, sounded strange coming from her, as if my work was an accident and her presence was the real value. After that, I started noticing the way they shared looks across a room, the way they would stop talking when I entered, the way Elena would defend Owen before I finished a sentence, the way Owen would speak for Elena as if they had already agreed on everything. It made me feel like the third person in my own marriage and my own company. I still did not act. I still did not press hard. Part of me was afraid to see the truth clearly. Another part of me believed that if I stayed calm and loyal, they would eventually return to balance. I kept choosing patience, because patience had solved many problems in my life. Then came the moment that should have forced me to wake up earlier. A vendor I trusted called me late one afternoon. He spoke carefully like he did not want to be the messenger. He told me Owen had asked them to change where payments were sent. He said Owen described it as a new structure. He asked if it was real because it sounded unusual. I told him I would check and call back. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Not because I did not understand, but because I understood too well. I called Owen and asked about it. He told me it was normal. He told me it was for tax efficiency and investor confidence. He told me I was behind on the new plan. He told me he would explain later. I asked when later was. He said he was busy. Elena, sitting nearby, told me to stop interrupting and let Owen work. That was when I felt something shift inside me. Not rage, not panic, just a cold clarity. I had spent years building something real. I had spent years believing loyalty would be returned. And now I could see the pattern. They were not just moving ahead without me. They were moving me out of the way while using my calm nature as cover. I did not know the full shape of what they were doing yet. But I knew one simple fact. They were no longer treating me like a partner or a husband. They were treating me like a resource they could manage. After that phone call from the vendor, I started paying attention in a different way. I still went to work. I still came home and cleaned the kitchen. I still tried to talk to Elena like adults, but inside, something had changed. I stopped filling in the blanks with hope. I stopped assuming people meant well. A week later, I woke up to the empty balances and the note on the table. I went to the office and watched my badge fail. I went to the bank and heard careful words that said nothing. And then I went home to a house that felt like a museum where someone had already taken the valuable pieces. For 2 more days, I tried to live like a normal person. I called Elena's phone until my thumb felt sore. I sent short messages asking where she was and asking for a call. I kept the messages polite because I wanted a reply. I did not get one. I reached out to Owen as well. I asked for a meeting. I asked for a clear explanation. He replied in short lines. He said things were moving fast. He said I was making it harder. He said I should think about my health and rest. He kept using words that made me sound unstable without saying it directly. By the end of that week, the practical side of life came forward. My mortgage payment was due. My personal savings were tied up in the same systems that now treated me like a stranger. My company card stopped working. My phone showed missed calls from people who used to answer on the first ring, but now did not pick up at all. I applied for jobs. I reached out to old contacts. I offered consulting. I kept my messages simple and professional. Most people gave me polite delays. They said they were sorry. They said they had just hired someone. They said they did not have budget. A few people were honest in a careful way. They said they heard there was drama around my name. They said they did not want to get involved. I learned quickly that when someone controls the story, they can lock you out of more than money. They can lock you out of rooms. They can make people afraid to stand near you. After a month, I had to make a decision I never thought I would make. I needed steady income, not pride, not status, just rent, food, and time. I took a job as a valet at a downtown hotel. The first day, I stood in a neat uniform with my name on a small tag. The hotel lobby smelled like polished stone and expensive perfume. Cars rolled in like they belonged in magazines. People handed me keys without looking at my face. Some smiled. Some acted like I was part of the pavement. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was honest work. I told myself I had carried heavier loads before. I kept my posture straight. I kept my voice calm. I took keys, parked cars, returned cars, and repeated the same polite lines. But humiliation is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet and constant. It is someone speaking around you like you are not there. It is someone snapping fingers like you are a tool. It is a guest complaining because a car is not returned in 2 minutes, even though the garage is full. One afternoon, a young man in a tailored jacket looked at my tag and then looked closer at my face. He asked if I was the Marcus Reed from that company everyone used to talk about. He said it with a half smile like it was entertainment. I told him I was. He looked at his friend and said it was strange how people fall. Then he walked away, laughing lightly. I did not react. I parked his car and kept moving. I knew what he wanted. He wanted to see me shrink. He wanted to feel taller by comparison. I did not give him that. The hotel staff were mostly decent. My supervisor, Gabe Hollis, was a practical man who cared about shifts and schedules. He did not ask me personal questions. He just said I should be on time and keep things smooth. In a strange way, that simple fairness felt comforting. Still, every day I saw the kind of people Elena and Owen liked to impress. I saw business travelers, investors, and executives. I saw expensive watches and bright smiles. It felt like I was standing outside my old life, holding the door open for it. The moment that cut deepest came in the second week. A black car pulled up, glossy and quiet. The driver stepped out first. He moved with steady attention, like someone trained to notice details. He looked at me for a long second, then asked my name. I told him. He paused and asked again, as if he needed to confirm it matched my face. Then he said I looked familiar, but not from the hotel. He said he had seen my face in an old photo. He said his boss had talked about me for years. He said his boss had been looking for me. I did not know what to say. Part of me thought it was a mistake. Another part of me felt a sudden pull toward a memory I had not touched in a long time. In 1994, I was a younger man. I was not rich. I was not polished. I was just steady and alert. There was an incident back then that I rarely spoke about, not because it was secret, but because it felt personal. I did what I thought was right, and then life moved on. I never thought it mattered beyond that day. The driver told me his boss was Nolan Pierce. I recognized the name immediately. He was the kind of man people read about. He owned companies. He funded big projects. His name carried weight in rooms that used to decide my future. The driver said Nolan had a son. He said something happened in 1994. He said a stranger stepped in and helped. He said that stranger was me. My hands stayed steady, but my mind felt like a door had opened. I told the driver I did not understand why Nolan would remember. The driver said Nolan remembered because it changed his family. He said Nolan never forgot the person who did the right thing without asking for anything. I nodded and kept my voice calm. I told him I was working and could not leave my post. He said he understood. He said someone would reach out soon. Then he returned to the car and drove off. For the rest of that shift, My body moved through routines while my thoughts ran in the background. I kept parking cars. I kept smiling. But the world felt different, like a hidden layer had become visible. That night, in my small studio, I did something I had not done in years. I sat at a simple table with a notebook. I wrote down the driver's name, because he had introduced himself as Tariq. I wrote down the time he arrived. I wrote down the car description. I wrote down Nolan Pierce. I wrote down 1994. Then I opened my phone and looked at the timeline of my recent life. Elena's unanswered calls, Owen's short replies, the bank meeting date, the day my badge failed, the vendor call that now felt like a warning. I did not have documents. I did not have a folder full of proof. Not yet. But I could track facts. I could build a timeline. I could stop relying on memory and start relying on records that exist outside feelings. Over the next days, I kept my notebook close. If I remembered a meeting that had been moved, I wrote the date. If I saw an event posted online with Owen speaking and Elena smiling beside him, I wrote the time and place. If a former coworker texted me something vague about how the office was changing, I saved it and wrote a short note about it. I was careful. I did not post online. I did not send angry messages. I did not accuse anyone. I kept my words plain and clean. I knew anything emotional could be used against me. People like Owen loved messy reactions because they could point at them and say, in a calm voice, that you were unstable. The hotel became a strange stage for me. I saw the same circles I used to sit in. I saw the same types of people who once asked for my opinion. Now they walked past me without looking. The contrast could have broken me if I let it. Then I saw them. It was a Thursday evening. The lobby was busy. A group arrived with confident steps and loud energy. I recognized Elena before she even turned her head. Her hair was styled the way she used to style it for investor dinners. She wore a bright smile and moved like she wanted to be noticed. Owen was beside her. He looked relaxed. He looked like a man who believed his life was safe. When they reached the valet stand, Owen glanced at my name tag and then at my face. He did not flinch. He did not look guilty. He looked satisfied. Elena's eyes met mine for a second. Her smile changed, but only slightly. She did not look shocked. She did not look sorry. She looked like she was checking a box in her mind, confirming I was where she expected me to be. Owen handed me keys with the same casual motion guests used. He said I should be careful with the car. He said it like he was giving a lesson. Elena stood beside him and said I looked different. She said she hoped I was doing well. Her voice sounded polite, but the message felt cold. I nodded and said I understood. I told them I would park the car. I kept my tone professional because the lobby was full of people. I could feel eyes drifting toward us. I could feel the staff listening without looking like they were listening. Owen leaned slightly closer and said, I should not create scenes. He said people were watching. He said he would not let me ruin something important. Elena said I should accept change and stop clinging to the past. I did not answer with emotion. I took the keys. I walked the car toward the garage. My chest felt tight, but my face stayed neutral. Inside the garage, away from cameras and smiles, I stopped and rested my hand on the steering wheel for one long breath. That was the line. Not because of their words alone, but because of the ease. They stood in public and treated my collapse like a footnote. They acted like I was a background character in a story they now owned. They believed the world would agree with them because they looked confident. When I returned the ticket stub and went back to my post, I realized something simple. They were not just taking from me. They were rehearsing the version of me they wanted other people to believe. That night, back in my studio, I did not cry. I did not drink. I did not punch a wall. I sat at my table and wrote down what happened, like an incident report. Date, time, location, names, exact phrases as close as I could remember. I wrote it calmly because I wanted it to be usable, not dramatic. Then I took out a plain folder I had bought from a discount store. I wrote one word on it in neat letters. I did not fill it with papers. I did not have those yet. But I placed the notebook inside. I placed the valet ticket copy inside. I placed a small printed schedule from work inside that showed the night they arrived. It was not proof of everything. It was a start. And as I turned off the light, I understood that my life was no longer about convincing them to be decent. It was about building a clean path forward step by step until the same systems they used against me had no choice but to see the truth. The next morning, after I saw Elena and Owen in the hotel lobby, I went to work like nothing happened. I parked cars, I returned keys, I held doors, I kept my voice even. I did this because I needed my job, and because I did not want to give them a story to repeat. If they could describe me as unstable, they would. I knew that now. When my shift ended, I walked back to my studio and sat at the small table again. I opened my notebook and wrote the details like I was logging equipment, not feelings. I wrote the date, the time, where they stood, who spoke first, and who looked away. I wrote the model of the car and the name on the reservation tag I saw hanging from the mirror. I wrote it all in plain language. I did not add extra words. I wanted it clean. I also did something else. I opened a calendar on my phone and started rebuilding the last 6 months. I added the day Elena began going to investor dinners without me. I added the week Owen changed our finance tools. I added the vendor call. I added the morning my badge failed. I added the day my personal card stopped working. I did not know what each piece meant yet, but I could feel the pattern tightening like a knot. Patterns become hard to deny when you see them in a line. 2 days later, Tariq returned to the hotel. He did not walk up like a casual guest. He waited until my supervisor stepped away, then approached me with a calm face. He asked if we could speak for a minute somewhere quiet, where cameras were not close. He said it was not about drama. He said it was about closing a long, open loop for his boss. We stood near the side entrance where delivery trucks come and go. Tariq told me Nolan Pierce had asked him to confirm my identity because Nolan had spent years asking assistants and investigators to find me without stirring noise. Tariq said Nolan remembered my name, but time makes details blurry. He said the old photo Nolan kept was faded, but Nolan never stopped pointing at it when the story came up. Tariq said Nolan wanted to meet me, but Nolan also wanted to approach it properly, with respect and privacy. I told Tariq I appreciated the message, but I did not understand why it mattered now. Tariq said Nolan believed a debt can grow heavy when it sits untouched. He said Nolan had built a life where people asked him for things every day, but this was the one person he could not find to thank. He said Nolan did not like open ends. He also said, carefully, that Nolan had heard about my situation through business circles, and Nolan did not like seeing someone who helped his family get erased. That word, erased, landed in my chest like a small bell. I did not correct him. I did not explain. I just listened. Tariq said Nolan's lawyer would contact me soon to set up a conversation. He asked if I had a safe number to use. I gave him my current phone number and told him mornings were best. Tariq nodded and said he would pass it on. The next day, my phone rang from a number I did not recognize. I answered, and a woman introduced herself as Maris Vance. Her voice was steady and careful. She said she represented Nolan Pierce. She said her client had a personal matter he wanted to address with me. She said she also understood I had a serious professional dispute unfolding. She said if I chose to speak, it would be private and respectful. She also said that if I needed guidance on next steps, she could point me toward the right process. I told her I was willing to speak. I did not beg. I did not pour out my story. I just said I was willing. Maris gave me an address for her office and suggested a time outside my work shift. She said I did not need to bring anything beyond my identification and any notes I had already made for myself. She said the first meeting would be about clarity, not pressure. That last part mattered. Pressure had been used on me for months, quietly, through tone and implication. Hearing someone say clarity felt like a rope thrown across water. On my day off, I took the bus across town and walked 2 blocks to a clean office building. The lobby was quiet. The air smelled like paper and coffee. A receptionist asked my name, and when I said it, she did not flinch. She just nodded and asked me to sit. That alone made my shoulders drop a little. I realized how tense I had been in every other room. Maris met me in a small conference space with plain chairs and a closed door. She did not treat me like a project. She treated me like a person. She asked me to start from the beginning, but she guided me to facts instead of feelings. She asked dates. She asked the legal structure of the company, as far as I understood it. She asked who had access to banking authority. She asked what communications I still had, and what had disappeared. I told her what I knew and what I did not know. I said my wife left with a note. I said my partner was controlling access at the office. I said the bank would not share details because the authorized profile had changed. I said I had a timeline and notes. I said I had kept my messages polite. I said I had not posted anything online. Maris listened and said that was good. She said calm records tend to hold up better than loud reactions. Then she asked about 1994. I had not expected that part to feel so real. She said Nolan Pierce had a memory of a young man stepping in during a chaotic moment involving his child, and that act shaped how Nolan thinks about loyalty. She said Nolan wanted to thank me in a practical way, not just with words. She also said Nolan had no interest in being used as a symbol or a headline. She said Nolan valued discretion. I told her I did not want a headline either. I told her I wanted my life back. I told her I wanted the truth recorded in the places that matter, not argued in public with people who only perform. Maris said there were proper steps we could take. She did not detail them in that room. She said the first step was building a clean package of information, a timeline supported by independent records where possible. She said I should not approach Owen or Elena directly anymore, except through controlled channels. She said I should not threaten anything. She said I should let systems do their job. Maris referred forensic accountant June Calder, expert in tracing money without speculation. June's office, practical, direct. I detailed company structure, access shifts, Owen's consolidation, vendor reroutes. She mapped footprints, money leaves trails, advice, separate witnessed events from hearsay, consistent timelines expose inconsistencies. Contacted former operations lead Lena, nervous, described Owen rewriting roles, Elena integrated, staff routed through him, approvals stripped. Lena noted template changes, new entities, excluded invites, furniture moved while claiming unchanged layout. Thanked her, advised self-protection, hotel shifts, noticed company-linked guests, gala prep, Owen Elena on schedules, routine anchored, work professionally, document openly visible patterns. Elena messaged, settle into reality, avoid public issues. Saved, no reply. Nolan's associate hinted attendance, observing unchecked behavior. Gala shift, valet steady. Owen Elena arrived triumphant. Owen warned no awkwardness. Elena hoped I'd accepted diminished life. Nodded, took keys. Nolan, Maris, June entered quietly. Side room. Nolan acknowledged past debt. Maris, June presented timeline, logs, ownership terms. My founder rights unerasable. Compliance rep confirmed restrictions active. Security escorted Owen Elena aside. Badges removed, access revoked. Room stilled, performance ended. I stood calm in uniform. No words needed. Systems enforced what emotion couldn't. Company control restored. Trails led to accountability. Truth, patiently mapped, reclaimed what manipulation stole. No vengeance, just solid ground reclaimed. Life, honest and mine, resumed.